Today, on A Word on Westerns, Tommy Cook.
There was a theater in Hollywood called the Hitching Post Theater. And all they did was show the great Western films from the 40s and 50s.
I wish it were still there.
Yeah. So I go there one week. I take my seat, and we, just before they come on with the first film, some guy comes and hits me right in the face. To this day, I don't know who did it. I would think he probably saw me in one of my films and didn't like it or something. I don't know.
Welcome to A Word on Westerns, where we talk to the greatest Western creators of yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
Good day to you, listeners. Today we have a spring beaver for you.
No, not a spring beaver. We have a little beaver. Hi, I'm Rob Word.
And I'm RJ Word. You're listening to A Word on Westerns.
Yes, you are. And welcome to the show. We do have a little beaver with us today. In fact, Little Beaver was the sidekick of a cowboy legend who started in the newspapers, went to radio, went to serials, went to movies, went to TV pilots, played by a lot of different rugged cowboys. But the first one was Don Red Barry in the Adventures of Red Ryder, a 1940 Republic serial. And that's how Don Red Barry got his nickname. But as the little sidekick, Little Beaver, Tommy Cook. Tommy Cook is our guest today. He's in his 90s. It's amazing when we're able to get a guest from the golden age of Hollywood and whose career spanned decade after decade. He was a bad kid in Tarzan and the Leopard Woman. He wanted to claw Jane with some wild stuff with Johnny Weissmuller in that too, and Johnny Sheffield. Tommy seemed to work with a lot of people. He had a wonderful part, a lead in one of the Roy Rogers B. Westerns. And on Have Gun Will Travel, he was in a terrific shootout episode with Richard Boone. So he's going to talk to us about those stories. But he's also going to talk about Little Beaver and about how he was a lucky child actor. His mother helped him, and he has an interesting byplay with his mother.
Well, I remember the other Little Beaver, Robert Blake, and you were talking about Tommy playing a bad kid. Well, Robert Blake played a
bad adult.
Yeah, a bad adult. That sounds
well. We're
right.
Not sure. I think he got entrapped by this grifter, but that's a whole nother story. We're talking about the original Little Beaver today.
You don't want to get controversial and political on A Word on Westerns?
I want to keep it to film history because I think that's our forte, and that's why people tune in, is they want to enjoy and hear the stories of the people who made these films. And Tommy certainly is one of those. And it was interesting that I didn't know this part of his career, that he put together celebrity tennis tournaments to raise money. And Patrick Wayne and Duke Wayne were part of that. And Patrick is in the audience during this show, and it was wonderful to see the two of them reunite and back together. I mean, both are wonderful people, and we hear some wonderful stories from Tommy today. I wish this interview had gone further, but maybe we'll get back together again with Tommy at a later date and celebrate his 100th birthday with him.
Absolutely, and if we do it in an audio-only format, like a podcast, he could be Funky Phantom or Jabberjaw.
Are these roles that he played?
Yeah, for Hanna-Barbera cartoons.
You know, he was a great voice actor. In fact, the radio version of Red Ryder, he was Little Beaver on that, and worked with Arch Obler on Lights Out and a lot of other things that we're going to get into in this interview. So I think we should start it right now.
That's a good call.
Here he is, Tommy Cook. Now, I love Westerns, and you do too. And we're going to talk about one of the classic Westerns today, directed by Quentin Tarantino's favorite director. That would be William Witney. He co-directed with John English several of the best Republic serials. One of the very best was The Adventures of Red Ryder with Don Red Barry. As Little Beaver? No, it's not Robert Blake. This is Tommy Cook, and he's our guest today. Let's have it for Tommy. Welcome, sir.
Good to be here.
Well, it's good to be seeing you here with us, too. That was
some of my friends, John Wayne's son, Patrick Wayne. We used to do all kinds of work together, celebrity charity tennis tournaments. John Wayne came and gave out the trophies.
Now, as you're talking about Duke at the tennis things, I can't imagine him in the white shorts jumping over the net playing tennis. Was that
No,
he ever
John
played?
Wayne didn't do that. He just came and he gave out the trophies, and he was nice enough to do that. And so it's good to see some of my friends here, and so let's do it.
Well, let's do it. Well, yeah, all right, we're here. What do you have to ask me? Well, let's start with your very first film, which was not Red Ryder. That was your second film. The first one was in one of those two-reel comedies with Edgar Kennedy. You played some nasty kid who throws a ball and breaks a window.
I was about 9 years old doing that and coming out of the Pasadena Playhouse. And I really started in radio. I was discovered by Arch Obler, the iconic Arch Obler.
Myself.
And I starred in his Everyman's Theater and Plays for Americans. And Arch had the greatest radio cast of all time. Republic Studios, Radford Drive. That's where it all started.
What's the matter, Little Beaver?
Too much the matter. Shark out of house with bars. Going to nail coach to Barker Ranch.
So there I was with two directors, William Witney and John English. We would go out in the countryside and start shooting. And in those days, in the valley section of LA, you could buy an acre of property for $10. I always loved riding. I used to go on weekends with my uncle to DeBrock Stables in the Los Feliz area. If we could just go back to those days, I would love to relive them. Love to get on little Papoose.
Papoose was the name of your horse?
Yes, Papoose. Yep. And as I said before, I used to, with Bill Witney, who directed the Red Ryder, had his own horses at home, and he would invite me on weekends, and I would go ride his horses.
What kind of guy was he like on set? Was he really organized and planned and knew what to do with the fights, or would he be creative and make it up as it was happening?
In those days, the stuntmen, they would set up the scenes. Bill Witney would just say, hey, how do we do this? Tell me. Go ahead. Put it together.
And then they'd wreck every single piece of furniture in the room. How did the duties between John English, who I guess did most of the dialogue, and Bill Witney, who did the action, how was that divided up? What was your day like?
Well, essentially, they worked together beautifully. I can't really tell you who did what scenes and what, but they worked beautifully, and there was never a problem. But we had a great association. But the two greatest stuntmen of all time in films worked with us. Even today, with all the CGI, computer graphics and everything, Davy Sharp and Yakima Canoe are our stuntmen.
Did Davy double Don Red?
Yes, he did. He did.
How did they find a double for you at your size?
Well, good question. I did some of my writing, but some of the real tough stuff, they couldn't take a chance, you know. They had people that were my size, you know, that were good writers. When I was 10 years old, it was in 1940, And in those days, you know, you had to have a mother on the set until you were 18 years old. And I had a wonderful mother. She never gave anybody in trouble. I would say, Mom, you just sit in the back, you do your knitting, don't fool around and talk about your son and everything. But she was one of the great, great mothers. And my father, God bless him, a Harvard graduate, but he became quite ill with Bright's disease. Kidneys didn't function. He would write up doing little PR for me and stuff. But I had a great family.
In the serial at Republic, because
Yes.
they were so well known for their action in the serials, and
Yes.
your Red Ryder is one of the very best, too. You have Noah Berry Sr.
Oh,
as
yes.
the villain.
You take the boys down and see if you can't convince Wells to sell out at the right price. It worked before, Ace.
What were those guys like to you? What was Don Red Berry like?
Well, Don was very nice. He wasn't crazy about doing the role, you know. They pushed him into it.
He wanted to
because
be Jimmy Cagney. didn't he?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Very good, very good. With Don Berry, he was under contract to Republic. And Herbert Yates, who was the head of Republic Studios, says, what are we doing with this Don Berry? It's not working. We got to get him, put him into something. So that's how he became Red Ryder.
Draw.
How are you one for that, Little Beaver?
Red Ryder not old Little Beaver nothing. Little Beaver pays some what he owe Red Ryder.
Thanks, Sprout. I'm gonna go find this bed.
Little Beaver go find Pony.
As you know, they then did Red Ryder films, not serials, with my dear friend Bobby Blake and Wild Bill Elliott and another Western star.
Were you disappointed that you didn't get that part?
No, it's just, they wanted something completely different. But then I went into radio on the old ABC Blue Network. And for 3 or 4 years, I played Little Beaver in the Red Ryder radio show on ABC. Reed Hadley played Red Ryder. We had the greatest radio actors that would play parts on the radio show. And one of my favorites was Mercedes McCambridge, who also was Arch Obler's favorite actress. And one day, ready to go on the air at 7:30, Langendorf bread, I'm in the restroom playing around, doing cartwheels and everything. All of a sudden, I look at oh my God, and I run down the hall. I get into Studio H at NBC where we're doing the show, and Mercedes McCambridge is saying, get him up, Papoose, for me. Saved my life. Anyway, we did it Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays, 7:30.
Were those live?
Yes, The Adventures of Red Ryder. We did it at 4 o'clock. In those days, you had to do a show for the Eastern community and then come back later for the Western country to have the show. And eventually, when Lone Ranger went off the air on KHJ, we took over that and we were on every day of the week for the radio show. To me, you know, I'm 93 years old today. Thank you, thank you. Those were treasured days for me. And you know, I did a whole mass of Western series put on Knife Patches, Mohawk, Battle of Apache Pass, and
Well, Battle of the Apache Pass. Let's talk about that. That was a sequel to
Yeah.
Broken Arrow. So
Yes,
you had
Jeff Chandler.
as Cochise, and you had Jay Silverheels
yes,
as Geronimo. And
good for you, good for you.
And that was a big, big hit for Universal, too.
Yes, yeah.
What did you think about this, like 10 years later than Little Beaver, still being cast as those Native Americans?
And thank my mom and dad for giving me the chance. And it was all natural. I just loved doing it, and nobody taught me or anything.
Let me mention another Western
Yeah.
star then, and you were in his very first starring role. It's not a Western, Audie Murphy's Bad Boy.
Yes.
And he was like a juvenile delinquent. That was 1949 or 50.
Yeah.
What was he
Audie
like?
Murphy was very nice to me. And we would go on location, And there were a lot of days when there was rain and we couldn't shoot. So we're all sitting around and we're gambling and everything. And I'm gambling. And Audie comes over to me and he says, "Hey, kid, don't get in trouble. These guys, they'll take all your money." So Audie saved me.
How old were you then when they were trying to bring you into the...
Early teens, my early teens. But I had a very nice association with Audie Murphy, and he was a total gentleman through it all.
In that film, because it was his first starring role, there was a lot of pressure put on him and everything. Was he nervous, or how was he?
No, he was, he just played with it. He was not a real actor, but he handled himself well and was well-liked, but good memories with Audie.
Well, he developed into a fine actor.
So you don't want him in, huh? No. Didn't buy what he had to sell then. I'm not buying it now.
And in fact, you know, he'd made a couple of really good films. One of them you're in. You have a wonderful scene with him. It's Night Passage, where he's the Utica kid, and you're this up-and-coming gunslinger. You want to be a bad guy, too, and you have a wonderful scene with him.
Yep. Those were good scenes.
So with the scene with Audie in that movie, Night Passage, that was, a lot of it was on location, too.
Oh, yeah.
And you had Jimmy Stewart there, too. What was he like? He played the accordion in that film.
A total professional. Total professional. You know, those actors back in the old days, they were the greatest. And Jimmy Stewart was just top-notch. Let's put it that way, top-notch.
Well, you had a nice array of villains in that film, too. Jack Elam and Robert Wilkie. Robert Wilkie public with you, probably.
Yes. Yeah, you're mentioning character actors from the good old days that were so prominent.
If I leave here, that boy goes with me.
Joey? Why do you want him?
Maybe for the good of his soul. It's been a long time since you heard that word, hasn't it?
One of the films I did, Homestretch, and where I played a jockey in it, it came time where they had to have me riding in one of the races there. They had to have the close-up. So they give me a thoroughbred that was a former thoroughbred running winner, you know. So here we are, and the camera truck is right behind me, and we take off, and I'm running, and I'm holding on as hard as I can, and the director says, "Whip him, whip him." And I'm saying to myself, "Whip him, you're lucky I'm on the gutless horse." Oh, gosh. But, I'll never forget that.
You were in one of my favorite Tarzan movies, too.
Yes.
Tarzan and the Leopard Woman. You tried to kill Jane.
Yes.
With a claw.
Yes.
So what's that all about?
Juanetta told me to do it. Johnny Weissmuller was wonderful. And, of course, little Johnny Sheffield. We didn't get along too well.
Why?
Competitors, you know. And Brenda
That's like
Joyce.
You were going to kill Brenda Joyce, Jane.
Yeah,
right?
She was very, very nice. And we shot that right near the Santa Anita racetrack, just when the war was ending. Down near San Diego, I was invited down there and to replay the film and to go over all the things that happened during the Tarzan film. That was a lot of fun.
Well, back at Republic, you worked with the King of the Cowboys in Song of Arizona.
Yes.
And Gabby Hayes and Dale and the
Roy
Sons
Rogers
of the Pioneers.
And Dale Evans.
Woo.
Yeah. And again, Roy Rogers was top-notch. He couldn't have been nicer.
Well, there were other child actors in that, too. Tommy Ivo, I think, too. And you went on to you have over 100 credits.
Just to give you an idea, some of the shows that I did, The Rifleman, Ford Television, Wyatt Earp, had a great relationship with Hugh O'Brien. As I say, we were both in the United States Marine Corps veterans.
And you did an arc on the Wyatt Earp where the stories were continued. It was almost like a little mini-series, 1, 2, and 3, those episodes.
I did several of the Wyatt Earps. Lawless Years, Frontier Justice, National Velvet, Assignment Underwater, Black Saddle, Have Gun Will Travel, Man Without a Gun, Zane Grey Theater, The Deputy, Crossroads, Bold Venture, Not for Hire, Verdict Is Yours, Joe Forrester. And that was with Lloyd Bridges, who was my second family. Bo Bridges, Lloyd, and Dottie were my dearest, dearest friends. What a great time working on Joe Forrester. Pony Express, Johnny Midnight, Mackenzie's Raiders, Celebrity Playhouse, Ethel Barrymore Theater, Passing Parade, M Squad, The Man Dawson, of course, Mohawk the Films, Night Passage.
Oh, Mohawk. Now let's talk about that. With Scott Brady, it's pre-Civil War. He is a painter who's like sleeping with his fiance, the Native American princess, and some saloon girl.
You're too much.
And you and Neville Brand are like bad Indians, you know? There's a lot of stock footage in that from Drums Along the Mohawk. So a film like that got put together with this ad campaign about Scott Brady sleeping with these three women.
You know, Neville Brand was a great American war hero, a tough guy. And I remember in a scene, he got carried away and he hit me right in the stomach. You know, didn't realize what he was doing. You know, he got carried away.
How your transition into putting together all these celebrity tennis matches, how did that come about?
I lived next door to Dr. Esther Bartosh, who taught Bobby Riggs. I started taking up tennis and I became, at LA High School, the Southern California junior tennis champion. So I started doing celebrity charity tennis events down at the Claremont Tennis Club. Patrick Wayne was with me on all of those shows. I ended up putting together a television series called The Challenge of the Sexes, where the top women and men celebrities play against each other, but that was on CBS, The Challenge of the Sexes. And I really enjoyed that. And Bobby Riggs was on that show with me. And tennis was a great, great part of my life.
Well, maybe that's why you're still in such great shape, too, you know? And I want to thank you for joining us here today, Tommy. Yes. It's been a nice trip back to those glorious days.
Well, I've enjoyed it so much, and I thank you all of you.
What a gentleman Tommy is. I met him at a screening of Cry of the City. He played Richard Conte's brother in that Victor Mature movie, one of the classic film noirs. And he was there talking with Alan K. Rohde. And I went to see it because I thought, well, this guy's in his 90s. I mean, how articulate is he going to be? I just want to see. And he was wonderful and a gentleman on stage. And I went up and introduced myself and asked if he'd like to do our show, and he said yes, and luckily he did, because to hear stories about working with Audie Murphy and Jimmy Stewart and, you know, Johnny Weissmuller,
so cool.
Just you don't get that anymore.
Yeah.
So thank you, Tommy, and thank everyone for listening, and we hope you join us on our next podcast for A Word on Westerns.
Happy trails.
If you enjoy what we do here, please take a moment to follow our show and share these interviews with your friends. You can also find A Word on Westerns on Patreon, Facebook, and YouTube. Thank you, and see you next week on A Word on Westerns. Westerns is produced and hosted by Rob and RJ Word and produced by Caroline Parker Stark. Edited by Alex Lockett and Boar and Ebor Dro. Location audio is provided by Richard Reagan. Sound design by Alex Lockett. A Word on Westerns theme song was composed by Karel Pasoda with additional arrangements by Shipwreck Music and RJ Word.